In the global electric vehicle boom, one name looms especially large: BYD. In China and many parts of the world, BYD Auto has become an EV colossus, selling millions of electric and plug-in hybrid cars annually and even outselling Tesla in certain markets. But in the United States, BYD's sleek electric cars are conspicuously absent from showrooms and streets. This raises a compelling question. Can BYD realistically enter and compete in the US auto market, or are the barriers simply too high? To answer this, we must navigate a web of obstacles that go far beyond the usual challenges a foreign automaker might face. Yes, US consumers have to be won over and service networks built. But BYD's path is additionally blocked by powerful policy walls, massive tariffs on Chinese-made EVs, national security rules targeting Chinese tech in cars, strict new EV tax credit regulations, entrenched dealership laws, and even battles over charging standards. In short, the road to America is filled with regulatory roadblocks and political tripwires unique to Chinese automakers. BYD, short for Build Your Dreams, is no upstart. It's a global EV powerhouse that has rapidly ascended the ranks of automakers. In 2024, BYD delivered over 4.27 million new energy vehicles, a category including pure electrics and plug-in hybrids, a jaw-dropping jump from the previous year. This momentum carried into 2025, with nearly 1 million EVs sold in just the first quarter. For context, BYD's scale means it is running neck and neck with Tesla for the title of the world's largest EV seller, and some analysts project BYD could seize the global #1 spot by 2025. Not bad for a company that started as a battery maker in the 1990s and only began car production in the 2000s. What's fueling this success? A big part of BYD's winning formula is its manufacturing cost advantage through extreme vertical integration. Unlike many traditional automakers that rely on a web of suppliers, BYD has taken much of the supply chain in-house, and it shows in both cost and resilience. The company produces its own batteries, the famed Blade battery, its own semiconductors, its electric motors and power electronics, and even mines or secures raw battery materials upstream. BYD's subsidiary FinDreams, for example, handles everything from refining lithium for battery-grade material to assembling the battery packs. The Blade battery, an innovative flat-cell LFP, lithium iron phosphate battery, is made entirely in-house, enabling BYD to avoid buying cells from giants like KTL or LG, and to continuously improve battery design for safety and cost. This deep integration yields multiple advantages: lower component costs, tighter quality control, fast product iterations, and immunity to supply shortages that hampered other carmakers. As one industry analysis noted, BYD's control over core technologies, battery, chips, motors, lets it fine-tune performance and drive down expenses in a way competitors find hard to match. BYD's cost leadership is evident in its pricing. In markets like China and emerging economies, BYD offers electric models that significantly undercut Western rivals in price, partly thanks to using LFP batteries which are cheaper, albeit slightly heavier, than the nickel-based batteries common in US EVs. And BYD can afford thinner margins on cars because it can offset costs across its battery business and other units, a flexibility some call cross-subsidization. The result? Tesla initiated multiple price cuts trying to keep pace with BYD's pricing, yet BYD still holds an edge in the budget and mid-range segments. Beyond cost, scale is another BYD strength. It operates several mega factories across China, capable of churning out hundreds of thousands of vehicles a year. With much of the parts production under the same roof, BYD's plants achieve impressive efficiency and output speed. This scale feeds a wide EV lineup, from the subcompact Dolphin and Seagull models to mid-size sedans like the Han, to SUVs and even luxury-oriented electric supercars under its Denza brand. Few automakers can match the breadth of BYD's electric model range, which positions it to target numerous customer niches simultaneously. Importantly, BYD's formula has translated into real success overseas. In Europe, for instance, BYD only began selling cars in volume around 2022, yet by April 2025, it managed to outsell Tesla in monthly electric car registrations, a stunning feat for a newcomer. BYD's sales in Europe that month were up 359% year-on-year, even as Tesla's dropped, thanks to BYD's broad and competitive lineup that includes both BEVs and plug-in hybrids tailored to various tastes. Across Asia and Latin America, BYD is making similar inroads. It's now a top-selling EV brand in countries like Thailand and Israel, and it's expanding aggressively in markets like Brazil and Mexico. In 2023 alone, BYD entered roughly 60 new global markets, partnering with local distributors, such as Hayden in Europe, to quickly establish a retail presence. This rapid global expansion underscores how competitive BYD's products are on performance and price, and how serious BYD is about becoming a worldwide automaker, not just a domestic champion. Given all this, one might expect BYD to be eyeing the world's second-largest auto market, the United States, as the next big prize. BYD's affordable EVs, backed by its low-cost manufacturing, could potentially appeal to US buyers looking for value options in the EV market. Moreover, BYD's experience building and selling electric buses in the US, through its Lancaster, California plant, shows it's not completely new to the American regulatory environment or workforce. Yet, despite BYD's strengths and the US consumers' growing appetite for EVs, the company has so far held off on a US car launch. In fact, BYD executives have repeatedly stated that an entry into the US consumer auto market is not on the near-term roadmap, a stark contrast to BYD's enthusiasm for Europe or Asia. Why the hesitation? This leads us into the thicket of obstacles that make the US a uniquely challenging destination for a Chinese automaker. BYD isn't staying away for lack of capability or ambition. It's staying away because the playing field in America is, at present, profoundly unfriendly to Chinese EV players. Let's dissect these US barriers one by one to see exactly what BYD is up against. Entering the US market is never easy for a foreign car brand. Just ask the Japanese and Korean automakers who spent decades winning trust. But BYD faces an unprecedented gauntlet of regulatory and political hurdles in America. In recent years, the US government and many states have rolled out measures that, while not always naming BYD or China explicitly, are undeniably aimed at restricting China's role in the high-tech automotive sector. The concerns driving these policies range from economic, protecting domestic industry, to geopolitical, supply chain security, data privacy, and national security. For BYD, these translate into concrete barriers that could make selling cars in the US either prohibitively expensive or outright impossible unless navigated very carefully. Let's explore the major hurdles shaping BYD's American prospects. 1. The 100% tariff wall on Chinese EVs. One enormous barrier can be summed up in one word: tariffs. In 2024, the US government dramatically increased tariffs on a host of China-made products, and electric vehicles drew perhaps the harshest penalty. Starting in late 2024, any electric passenger vehicle imported from China faces a 100% tariff, effectively doubling its cost to US buyers. This move, finalized by the US Trade Representative's office, is part of a broader tariff strategy targeting strategically important goods, batteries, semiconductors, solar panels, etc., in response to trade tensions and industrial policy competition with Beijing. But the upshot is simple. A BYD car built in China would incur a 100% import duty when brought to the US, turning a $35,000 EV into a $70,000 EV proposition before other costs. Such a tariff is an almost insurmountable cost barrier. BYD has built its brand largely on offering bang-for-buck, value-packed EVs at lower prices than Western rivals. A doubling of price would utterly erase BYD's pricing advantage and make its models woefully uncompetitive. For context, even before the 100% rate, Chinese-made vehicles faced US import tariffs, 25% on many autos under earlier trade war measures. Those were painful but potentially manageable with slight price adjustments or absorbing some margin. At 100%, however, the tariff is basically a prohibition. No automaker can swallow that cost, and very few consumers would pay double price out of pocket. It is essentially a de facto ban on importing China-built EVs into the American market. This tariff doesn't name BYD specifically. It applies to any EV made in China, regardless of brand. But BYD, as the world's largest producer of China-made EVs, is precisely the type of company it impacts most. Notably, other EV startups from China, like NIO, XPeng, etc., are likewise frozen out by this measure. Even Tesla, which makes some cars in its Shanghai gigafactory, would have to avoid importing those to the US due to the tariff. In essence, the US sent a clear signal. If your car rolls off a factory floor in China, it's not welcome here at a remotely feasible price. It's worth noting that America isn't alone in eyeing Chinese EV imports warily. The European Union also launched an anti-subsidy investigation in 2023 and is moving toward higher tariffs, rumored around 10 to 20% or more, on Chinese-made EVs. But the EU's proposed tariffs, around 10 to 45%, are still far less draconian than a blanket 100% duty, and Chinese automakers have responded there by exploring local assembly or tweaking their export mix, for example, sending more plug-in hybrids to Europe, which weren't immediately tariffed. The US tariff, however, leaves almost no room for such workarounds. It's a straight doubling that nullifies any cost advantage of manufacturing in China. For BYD, this means its current production base, nearly all in China, cannot directly supply the US market without rendering the vehicles unaffordable. In short, the tariff hurdle forces BYD to consider other production locations if it ever wants to sell in America, a point we'll revisit in the scenario analysis. It also underscores the politically charged trade environment. Any Chinese company attempting US market entry must now contend with the reality of trade policy being used as a protective moat around the American EV industry. 2. Connected Vehicle Foreign Tech Ban, 2025 onward. Tariffs are just the beginning. Even if BYD could somehow get cars into the US cost-effectively, another rule could stop them at the border. The new Connected Vehicles regulation targeting electronics and software from China and other US-defined adversaries in automobiles. Effective March 2025, the US Department of Commerce's Bureau of Industry and Security, BIS, rolled out a final rule prohibiting the import or sale of any new connected vehicle that contains certain critical technologies from countries like China. In plainer terms, if a car has hardware or software that enables it to communicate with the outside world, think cellular modems, wireless chips, onboard connectivity modules, or advanced driver assist systems, and that technology comes from a Chinese-affiliated company, the car will be barred from US markets under this rule. Modern electric cars, especially ones as high-tech as BYD's, are effectively rolling computers, always connected to networks for navigation, software updates, telemetry, etc. BYD's vehicles undoubtedly use a suite of electronic components, and given the company's Chinese roots, many of those might be sourced from domestic suppliers or designed in-house. Under the Connected Vehicles rule, BYD, or any automaker, will need to scrub their supply chain of restricted Chinese Russian-linked tech for any car they want to sell in America. This covers things like communications modules, cellular modems, Bluetooth/Wi-Fi chips, certain AI or autonomous driving software, and other vehicle connectivity systems, collectively termed VCS, Vehicle Connectivity Systems, and ADS, Automated Driving Systems, by regulators. For a Chinese automaker, compliance is especially tricky. Not only must BYD ensure each component in those categories is from an approved source, but if the automaker itself has a sufficient nexus to China, it faces an additional ban. Starting with model year 2027, any new connected car sold by a manufacturer with deep Chinese ties is forbidden from containing any covered Chinese hardware/software, even if the car is built in the US or elsewhere. In fact, the rule explicitly states that a Chinese connected manufacturer cannot knowingly sell a new connected vehicle in the US at all, from 2027 onward, if it contains the banned tech, and this applies even to US-made vehicles. The implication is stark. BYD, as a Chinese company, could be outright barred from selling smart cars in the US within a few years, unless it undergoes a massive de-Chinification of its tech stack. And a dumb car without connectivity is not an option in today's market. Consumers expect features like smartphone integration, live navigation, telematics, and advanced safety systems. The Connected Vehicles rule is motivated by national security fears. US officials worry that Chinese electronics in cars could be a Trojan horse. Vehicles capturing sensitive data, like camera feeds or location near military bases, or even being remotely controlled or disabled via hidden backdoors. These concerns have been voiced in Congress for years, and now they've crystallized into a regulation forcing automakers to essentially choose non-Chinese tech solutions. For BYD, it means re-evaluating every chip and software system in its vehicles for compliance. Using, say, a Huawei or ZTE-made module in an infotainment system, or a Baidu-developed software for navigation, any such ties could violate the rule. BYD would likely have to source Western or other approved components for things like 4G/5G connectivity units, perhaps using Qualcomm or other non-Chinese chips, and ensure its software passes US security muster. This is doable technically. After all, BYD sells cars in Europe and must meet European standards. But it adds cost and complexity. Moreover, the rule's special provision about manufacturers with a nexus to China raises the specter that BYD might face extra scrutiny simply due to its Chinese ownership, potentially needing government clearance or declarations just to sell cars at all. 3. EV tax credits and the foreign entity of concern trap. Another formidable barrier is financial rather than outright prohibitive: the loss of consumer incentives. The United States Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, of 2022 overhauled EV tax credits to boost domestic manufacturing and discourage dependence on China. Under the new rules for the federal $7,500 electric vehicle tax credit, only vehicles that meet strict North American assembly and sourcing criteria qualify. Crucially, starting in 2024, any EV that contains battery components or critical minerals from a foreign entity of concern, FEOC, a term effectively aimed at China, is completely ineligible for the tax credit. In plain language, if any part of the EV's battery is made by or sourced from a Chinese company, that EV gets $0 in federal incentive for the buyer. Let's unpack the impact. Today, a $7,500 credit can make or break an EV's competitiveness in the US market. Domestic models from Ford, GM, Tesla, etc. that qualify are effectively $7,500 cheaper for consumers than an equivalently priced vehicle that doesn't qualify. So an imported BYD car, or one with Chinese battery parts, not only might face tariffs, but even if it didn't, it would cost consumers $7,500 more net compared to an American-made EV that does get the credit. That's a huge pricing disadvantage. For example, suppose BYD could sell an EV at $40,000 in the US. A US-built competitor at $47,500 sticker would end up the same effective price after the credit. BYD's famed cost advantage narrows or vanishes in that scenario. The FEOC provision is laser-focused on batteries because batteries are both the costliest part of an EV and an area where US policymakers want to reduce Chinese influence. The IRA explicitly said, after December 31, 2023, no credit is allowed if any component of the EV battery is manufactured or assembled by a foreign entity of concern like China. And after December 31, 2024, the same restriction applies to critical minerals sourcing from such entities. BYD, as a Chinese automaker, has an entire battery arm, FinDreams, that makes its packs, and it sources materials from within China's ecosystem. Under these rules, a BYD vehicle's battery would be considered tainted by FEOC content unless BYD radically reorganizes its supply chain. Even if BYD built a car in, say, Mexico or the US, if the battery inside it was made by BYD's own battery subsidiary, a Chinese company, or used Chinese origin cathode materials, the car would fail the credit eligibility test. The net effect is that a BYD car, under current rules, could not offer US buyers the $7,500 federal incentive, putting it at a major marketing disadvantage. This is something Tesla, GM, Ford, etc. benefit from for at least some of their models, and even foreign brands like Hyundai/Kia are racing to localize production in order to regain eligibility for credits. BYD would start from behind on price because of this policy. And it's worth noting the $7,500 credit is just the federal part. There are also state-level incentives in many states, some of which similarly exclude vehicles with high foreign content or that are not assembled locally. While a tax credit denial is not as absolute as a tariff or a ban, it creates a strong economic disincentive for consumers to choose a BYD vehicle. BYD would have to either lower its prices, eating into margins, to compensate for the missing credit, or hope that consumers see enough value to pay extra. A tough ask in a cost-sensitive mass market, especially for a brand with no US track record. If BYD ever decides to take the US passenger car market seriously, its options narrow to 3 routes that each live under the same shadow: tariffs, tax credit rules, and the new connected vehicle restrictions. The choices look simple on paper: import from China, assemble in North America outside the US, or fully localize in America. But each path changes the cost math, the legal exposure, and the political optics. The real question isn't just, can BYD sell a car? It's, can BYD sell a compliant, competitively priced car at scale without tripping the wires Washington has now strung across the road? Let's take them one by one. Scenario 1. Direct imports from China. Fastest in theory, mostly unrealistic in practice. In a world without the new barriers, BYD could do what many automakers have done for decades: allocate capacity from Chinese plants, certify to US standards, and ship. That would be the lowest friction way to test demand. BYD has the scale, the cost base, and China-built models already shaped for tough markets like Europe. On paper, it's the quickest route to a US showroom. But today's tariff regime makes that speed irrelevant. A 100% tariff on China-built EVs doubles the sticker or forces BYD to eat catastrophic losses. Add to that the fact that US consumer EV credits require final assembly in North America, and the batteries must clear foreign entity of concern rules, so an imported BYD comes with no federal incentive. Your neighbor's US assembled crossover might effectively be $7,500 cheaper by law. Your BYD isn't. The value proposition collapses before the first ad runs. There's more. The connected vehicle rule begins to bite in 2025 and tightens by 2027. Hardware, software, and services tied to certain Chinese suppliers can trigger bans on sale or import. Even if BYD customized a US build with non-Chinese connectivity components, it would be doing so into a tariff wall without credits, while facing a 2027 cutoff unless the company's structures and supply chain are re-engineered to satisfy the Nexus test. It's compliance cost on top of tariff cost, on top of marketing disadvantage. Could an ultra-niche import work anyway? Maybe a limited high-end halo model where brand building matters more than margin. The problem is that luxury buyers pay for heritage, residuals, and network confidence. A newcomer Chinese brand, priced like an established premium name, fights uphill on trust. Fleets? BYD has experience in buses and once ran tiny e-taxi pilots, but the tariff math kills scale and the rulebook still applies. Unsurprisingly, BYD's public stance has been consistent. No near-term pursuit of US consumer car sales via straight import. The company knows this is a political minefield and a financial dead end. Scenario 2. Assemble in Mexico, USMCA relief, real optionality, and real complexity. If importing from China is blocked, the next obvious step is to build in North America, but outside the US, and enter under USMCA. Mexico offers an industrial base, lower operating costs than the US, and duty-free access if regional content rules are met. That alone removes the 100% China EV tariff from the equation. For a cost-focused manufacturer like BYD, it's the most practical way to keep prices sharp while getting physically closer to the US market. The signals are clear. BYD has scouted Mexican sites and incentives, discussing capacity that starts meaningful, on the order of a mid-size plant, and can scale. Publicly, executives say the plant serves Mexico first. That's both credible and diplomatic. Mexico's EV market is growing, and Latin America is becoming a BYD stronghold. Quietly, though, a Mexico base preserves the option to look north if and when the policy climate allows. USMCA helps with tariffs, but it doesn't magically unlock US tax credits. Final assembly in North America clears the first gate for the $7,500 consumer credit. The hard gate is the battery. FEOC, Rules disqualify vehicles with battery components or critical minerals linked to certain Chinese entities. If BYD feeds a Mexico assembly line with China-sourced packs or cells, the vehicle won't qualify. To win the credit, BYD needs a non-FEOC battery pathway inside North America, either a partner's cells or a structure where the manufacturer of record isn't a foreign entity of concern. That is less an engineering problem than a corporate governance and supply chain problem, and it takes time. Early phases can start with semi-knockdown kits and quick localization wins, wire harnesses, seats, interior modules, while BYD negotiates a compliant battery solution. The connected vehicle rule remains a hard constraint. Mexico origin doesn't change the US rules trigger, import or sale. BYD would still need to build a clean connectivity stack, hardware, software, services, from non-restricted suppliers and be ready to document and certify that chain. Politically, a built-in Mexico label may feel less provocative than built in China, but the legal standards don't care about optics, and optics are complicated anyway. Washington is wary of Mexico becoming a backdoor for Chinese autos. Mexico City has reportedly been cautious under US pressure about luring Chinese EV makers with splashy incentives. Politicians in the US have floated ideas for targeted tariffs on Mexico-built Chinese brand vehicles. USMCA limits how abrupt such moves can be, but it doesn't eliminate creative policymaking through the Tech Security or Safety Rulebook. BYD's public line, Plant for Mexico, no declared US export intent, keeps the temperature down while preserving strategic flexibility. So how would BYD actually enter the US from a Mexico base? Probably not with a splashy consumer push on day one. The logical on-ramp is commercial fleets, electric delivery vans, ride-hail sedans, service vehicles. Fleet buyers care about total cost of ownership and uptime more than badges, and some buy without consumer credits. Prove reliability, serviceability, and parts support there. Then test limited retail programs in EV-friendly states like California with aggressively priced crossovers. If the product is good and the stack is compliant, early adopters will follow. If policy shifts hostile, the Mexico plant still serves Mexico and the broader region. Scenario 3. Build in the United States, the cleanest endgame and the hardest lift. The third path is the most direct way to neutralize tariffs, earn incentives, and build political capital, put factories and jobs on US soil. It's the playbook foreign automakers have used since the 1980s and the one today's battery makers are following to unlock IRA manufacturing credits. For BYD, it could work if the company can solve for FEOC, connectivity, and national security scrutiny, all at once. The upsides are obvious. A US-built BYD avoids import tariffs entirely. It meets the final assembly in North America test for the consumer credit. If the battery is manufactured in the US by a non-FEOC producer, the vehicle can claim the full $7,500, subject to price and income caps, and the battery plant itself can tap lucrative per kilowatt-hour manufacturing credits. State and local governments often sweeten the pot with land, tax abatement, and workforce grants. On the ground, supply lines shorten and logistics get simpler. The downsides are non-trivial. A BYD-owned battery line is likely FEOC by definition. That means the battery piece must be JV'd, licensed, or restructured, so the manufacturer of record is not a foreign entity of concern. Minerals, cathode, and anode inputs must come from compliant sources, where capacity is tight and competition is fierce. The connectivity stack must be purged of restricted vendors, then documented to a standard that satisfies auditors who will assume the worst until shown otherwise. And any high-profile Chinese investment in a sensitive sector is likely to face CFI US review and political flare-ups. We've already seen how controversial it can be for a US automaker to license Chinese battery tech. An outright Chinese automaker proposing to build cars here invites even sharper questions. Still, if BYD is going to pay the US entry fee, it should go after a gap big enough to matter. That gap is affordable EVs. Today, credible sub-$30,000 long-range EVs are rare. BYD's wheelhouse, efficient platforms, vertical integration, cost control, sets up exactly the kind of compact sedan and crossover that could hit $25,000 to $30,000 MSRP. Layer the $7,500 credit on top, if compliant, and you're suddenly offering under $20,000 effective pricing to a mass audience. That changes adoption curves. To overcome brand unfamiliarity, BYD could launch under a new mark, partner with a familiar US brand, or build a US majority JV that manufactures BYD-designed vehicles with governance firewalls around data and supply. None of that is easy. All of it is doable with the right partners. Where is BYD today on this? There's no announced US passenger car plant. The company is busy winning where rules are clearer: Europe, Asia, Latin America, and building optionality in North America through Mexico. That looks less like hesitation and more like sequencing. Secure volume growth in open markets. Build a North American footprint that can pivot. Enter the US only when the rulebook and the battery pathway are workable. So what's the likely game plan? First, build the Mexico hub for Mexico and Latin America and design it from day one as if US compliance will eventually be required. That means raising North American content steadily, cultivating non-restricted suppliers, and standing up a clean connectivity stack now, not later. Second, lock in a path to a non-FEOC battery, whether through a partner's cells, a carefully structured JV, or licensed tech where the manufacturing entity passes the Treasury's tests. Without that, the $7,500 consumer credit stays out of reach and your retail pricing power is capped. Third, tiptoe into the US through fleets, delivery, ride-hail, municipal service, where centralized buyers can evaluate total cost and where the brand hurdle is lower. Use those wins to prove reliability, build service networks, and gather real-world data. Fourth, prepare a consumer launch kit for EV-friendly states, a compact crossover and a compact sedan with aggressive pricing, strong warranties, transparent data and privacy policies, and parts service embedded with reputable partners. Decide the badge strategy: new brand, partner badge, or JV, based on where the political temperature is lowest and the retail acceptance is highest. Finally, keep watching the rulebook. FEOC clarifications, connected vehicle enforcement milestones in 2025 and 2027, and any USMCA adjacent side agreements will set the pace. One adverse tweak, say, a targeted safeguard on Mexico-built Chinese brand EVs. One helpful clarification, like a well-defined JV structure that clearly clears FEOC, can accelerate it. BYD can't control those dials, but it can control its readiness.